Rachel, thank you for joining us for this web extra. We really appreciate it. You've talked and written about nonviolent resistance that can be the most accessible drivers of social change if the message is broad and it appeals to enough people. How does the Black Lives Matter and the protest after the murder of George Floyd and the shooting of Jacob Blake seem to you through that lens?
So the tragic deaths of George Floyd and so many other African Americans in this country have, if there's been any possible silver lining, finally helped many other Americans understand the the incredibly unequal justice that this country has meted out for a long time. And that is good, because what we see from overseas is that when you really have success as a social movement, you do two things. You have a broad base of people, that's about numbers, but it's also about crossing silos. So in our country, that would mean Black and white, that would mean Native American and rural and urban, and people who are Democratic and people who are Republican. The reason that that kind of broad base matters is that it's not just about numbers. In highly polarized societies, which is where you see that kind of highly unequal justice system, in highly polarized societies, if you have a narrative that only reaches your side of the polarized divide, your narrative will be dismissed by the other side, and you will not break through and you will not succeed. So what social movements have to do is create narratives that bridge those divides, and that makes them bigger, but it also means that they can be heard. And what we saw after George Floyd's death was, for the first time, a narrative about inequity and the problems in our justice system finally breaking through to many whites who hadn't believed it before. And that's a real source of hope.
Now, I was in Kenosha earlier this year, right after the city was hit with riots, and I could still smell the fire. And when I got there, and I kept thinking about Milan Kundera's novels about Czechoslovakia during the communist occupation, and I was hit with this existential crisis, this question for me, that sometimes violence is inevitable to fight systemic inequality. Is that fair? I mean, it's something that really struck me. Is violence sometimes the only answer to systemic inequality, to overthrow it? Or, or is that just a cynical view from our 20th century Marxism and capitalism's Cold War dichotomy?
Well, what the research shows, and here I'm drawing on Erica Chenoweth and Maria Stefan, who are really the most able researchers. Erica's now at Harvard and has gone on to do just a plethora of research on this, is that violent protest fails far, far more often than nonviolent protest. And she's categorized this across the 20th century, done the numbers, and she's also done the deeper research, the case studies and so on. And what she's found is that it's not just that it fails systemically, it's that it fails for a reason. And the reason is that as your protests become more violent, you lose that broad base that I was talking about before. So, I'm a mother of two kids. I believe strongly in a lot of progressive social change, but I also want to keep my kids alive. So if a protest becomes violent, I'm not going to go out to it anymore. And that's what happens to a lot of people. As violence starts happening, what you start getting is a shrinking of the people willing to protest. That shrinking allows the security services and also the people in power to isolate the protesters, to create counter narratives against them, and to arrest more of them, to silence more of them because there's fewer of them, and to create wedge strategies against it. So when you create violence as part of your protest, you lose a lot of not just the moral high ground, but the actual people who are enabling you to succeed. And that is unfortunate. And it's unfortunate, particularly for people who feel so strongly about this cause that they think, well, I'll just commit some property violence. Because even property violence has this effect of polarizing and narrowing the other side. People feel property violence as violence against themselves in a certain way. So it's very important, and it's a very hard message for some people to take in. When people are angry, to be told that they're not allowed to use violence is hard for some people, but it's what all the research shows.
Are you hopeful for the 2024 election that we won't be as tense as we were this time around?
You know, I think it'll help a lot to have a more moderate voice in power, but I would say I'm cautious about what happens in 2024. In my own research in other countries that have had a leader like Trump, which in political science parlance, we would call this an authoritarian populist leader, a populist because he's trying to appeal directly to the people against the institutions of democracy, basically saying, you don't need those institutions, come straight to me, I can sort of break the institutions and get things done. And an authoritarian because he wants to concentrate power in himself as well. And so that kind of anti-elite concentration of power message puts him in that category. When you see other authoritarian populists in other countries, what you see is either they win twice, that's what Yascha Monk's research shows, they often win a second term. In the cases where they don't win a second term, you often get a centrist who follows. That centrist is not very satisfying to a lot of the electorate. The side that was on the side of the authoritarian populist is kept going by the direct messaging to the people, whether it's left or right, whether you're talking about a Chavez in Venezuela or a Berlusconi in Italy, that direct messaging continues and riles up the base. And the people on the side of the elected leader feel like they're not getting what they really wanted, which was a fire and brimstone fight. You know, they wanted to bring the fight to the other side, and instead they're getting more moderation, often because of what we are likely to face here, which is a split Senate presidential, you know, two different parties in power. And so they end up one-termers. And then what you tend to see is a bouncing back and forth between different polarized sides. So very right, very left, very right, very left. Italy perfected this by electing both the very right and the very left at the same time. And they got a sort of a single government that brought together their nativist party and their kind of far left party in the same government, which lasted for, in typical Italian fashion, just a couple of years. So hopefully we will get better, but the research suggests that is not incredibly likely, and that there's changes that we need to make to change that dynamic. I really think that the ranked choice voting that Santa Fe has passed, that's in a lot of other counties in New Mexico are interested in, holds one key because it's a depolarizing mechanism. You don't vote solely for a Democrat or Republican. You get to pick your flavor of Democrat and Republican, and that allows for much more responsiveness to an electorate. And that kind of structural change, if it passes in other states and moves up, can help take these parties out of the hardest core, you know, Trumpists and so on, and move them to something that's a little more reasonable.
Rachel, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much.